Unit conversion. There are going to be a lot of times this semester where you're going to have to convert from one unit to another, and we are going to practice a lot of different examples of that right now. This is not going to be exhaustive, but it will give you a lot of great places to start from when you're working through your first few sets of homework assignments. Now, let's start by converting 3,450 seconds into minutes. Okay, so whenever we perform a unit conversion, of course we start with the quantity that we want to convert. So we've got our 3,450 seconds, and then we multiply it by our conversion factor. You have to choose an appropriate conversion factor. Okay, so the conversion factor, you can think about it as being a fraction where the top and the bottom are equal to each other, and it's saying like an equivalency of some unit. So I want to take seconds and put them into minutes, and so I know that there are 60 seconds in 1 minute. And so my conversion factor is going to have something to do here with 60 seconds and 1 minute. Okay, and I'm going to put the 60 seconds on the bottom here, and I'm going to put the 1 minute on top. These things are equivalent. 1 minute is the same thing as 60 seconds, so it's like dividing 1 by 1. Okay, and so I put the 1 minute on top and the 60 seconds on the bottom because I want these units of seconds to cancel with each other. Okay, and so if this second is on top and this second is on the bottom, they cancel with each other. Okay, and then what I can do is finally calculate my answer. I'm left with units of just minutes right here. And so what I do is I take 3,450 multiplied by 1, and then I divide by 60 in order to go from seconds into minutes. And so if I do that, I find that my answer is 5.75 times 10 to the 1 minutes. Okay, that's the same thing as 57.5 minutes. Okay, so that's a pretty simple one going from seconds to minutes. Let's do another one. Let's do, so I'll just put an arrow here to say that's where we started from. Let's do kilometers or meters into kilometers. So you might see this happening quite a lot, especially in the physics class this semester, maybe even in astronomy too, going from kilometers to meters or meters to kilometers or various other things that have kilo in them. So we have 2.34 times 10 to the 12 meters. And we want to put that into kilometers. So we start with our number that we want to convert here, and we're going to multiply it by an appropriate conversion factor. So I know that in 1 kilometer, so remind ourselves that we're going from meters into kilometers, that in 1 kilometer, there's 1,000 meters. Kilo means 10 to the 3. There's 10 to the 3 meters in 1 kilometer. So I've got 10 to the 3 meters on the bottom and 1 kilometer on top. My meter cancels there and there. So now I take 2.34 times 10 to the 12 times 1 and divide it by 10 to the 3 in order to get my answer here, which should be 2.34 times 10 to the 9 kilometers. So these are my units here, units of kilometers. So now let's convert a number from meters to AU, astronomical unit. The astronomical unit is the distance between the Earth and the Sun. And I'll show you what 1 AU is equivalent to here in a minute. So we start with our number, which is going to be 2.34 times 10 to the 12 meters. So 2.34 times 10 to the 12 meters, and we want it in units of astronomical units. So 1 astronomical unit, that's our distance from the Earth to the Sun, is about 1.5 times 10 to the 11 meters. Okay, so again, we have our conversion factor. We've got meters canceling on top and bottom. We take 2.34 times 10 to the 12 and divide it by 1.5 times 10 to the 11. That gives us 1.57 times 10 to the 1 astronomical unit, or 15.7 astronomical units. Okay, now if we come over here, you don't have your calculator with you. What you could do, or you don't have a scientific calculator, you can still take 2.34, divide it by 1.5, that's your 1.57, and then because we're dividing this number times 10 to the 12 divided by this number times 10 to the 11, we subtract the exponents. So then the exponent, the times 10 to your exponent, that exponent here would be 1 because 12 minus 11 is 1, okay? So that's another way you can do it if you don't have your calculator. Now let's do something a little bit more complicated with unit conversions. Let's take 38.9 kilometers per hour to meters per second. Okay, so now we have to use two conversion factors in order to get our answer. So we start with our value. We want to convert 38.9 kilometers per hour. And I need to multiply it by two conversion factors to get to meters per second. Let's take care of the time first. Let's go from hours to seconds. So we're going to multiply it by a conversion factor that tells me how many seconds there are in an hour. Or if you don't know that, we can go from how many minutes there are in an hour, then to how many seconds there are in a minute. So let's do that one. So we know that in 1 hour, there are 60 minutes, okay? And then I know that in 1 minute, there are 60 seconds. And so if I just look at those conversion factors that I wrote down here, I cancel my hour and my hour with my minute and my minute. Now I'm left with units of kilometers over seconds. So I'm almost there. I need to get to my unit. I need to get from kilometers to meters here. So I multiply by one more conversion factor. And to go from kilometers to meters, remember that kilometer or kilo is 10 to the 3. There are 10 to the 3 meters in 1 kilometer. So in 1 kilometer, there's 10 to the 3 meters. So here my kilometer on bottom cancels with this kilometer here, and now I'm left with just my units of meter on top and seconds on the bottom, which is what I was trying to go for. Okay, and so what I have to do is I have to multiply everything on the top and then divide it by everything on the bottom multiplied by each other. So this is 38.9 times 10 to the 3, that has units of meters, over 60 times 60, that has units of seconds, okay? And so then in the end, whenever I do that, I get that this is 10.8 meters per second, okay? Well, there we are. Now, if you ever forget how many seconds there are in an hour, I'll quickly show you how you can get that. So if we start with 1 hour, and we want to get to how many seconds there are in an hour, we can kind of do what we just did up here with the hours to minutes, minutes to seconds. So in 1 hour, I can multiply that by a conversion factor where I know that in 1 hour, there are 60 minutes. And I multiply that by, in 1 minute, I know that there are 60 seconds, okay? So then, I started with 1 hour, and in the end, I find that 1 hour is the same thing as 60 times 60 seconds, which is 3,600 seconds, okay? So you can always go through that conversion factor here if you forget that there's 3,600 seconds in 1 hour. You can just jump right to the seconds to hours if you know that conversion off the top of your head, or you can derive it every time by doing this right here, okay? Now let's do one more. Let's convert 21 feet per second into miles per hour. Okay, so we're going to start here, 21 feet over second times, okay, so we just figured out this conversion factor here. I know that there's 3,600 seconds in 1 hour. So I can skip a couple of steps because I just figured out what that conversion was from hour to second. And then, so I've got my hours, which is what we're looking for. I need to get from feet into miles. So this is something that you would have to look up in a textbook or the appendices of your textbook or online. If it's not something that you have in your head, which I don't even really remember this in my head, how many feet there are in a mile. But there are 5,280 feet in 1 mile. So that's my conversion factor here. And so my feet cancels with my feet, and I'm left with my units of hours and miles, okay? And so I take 21 times 3,600, divide it by 5,280, and that gives me 14 miles per hour. Let me put the little MI there. That's the abbreviation I'm going to use for miles.